Good morning and welcome to the last day here at APEX 2017 in San Diego. We did get off to a little bit of a false start early this morning, so thank you for sticking with us. My first guest this morning is Phil Stoten, old friend and industry colleague. Phil, welcome.
Thank you, and less of the old, but we'll go with that.
Well, it's funny. I mean, this show seems to be a little bit of a watershed because there's so many people planning their succession. Alan Cable just sold his company to Nordson, and he's going off to the golf course. We've got Bob Black, of course, announcing his successor, which is coming in, Bill Astle. He's not leaving for another year yet, of course. But it just seems that it's a bit of a watershed show, this one. So what's your take on it so far?
Well, I think it's been a really interesting show. I've been very impressed with the scale of the show and the investment the exhibitors have made. I remember when NEPCON West kind of disappeared and IPC and Apex came in, and it was all pole and drape and small booths, and the idea was to keep it very, very much that kind of style. And we've not got to that kind of ridiculous stages that NEPCON West have got to, but some impressive booths, and people have made some good investments, which bodes well for the US market. I've been very impressed with that. And I agree with you, there has been a bit of a watershed, and I think a watershed in terms of technology as well. What we've seen, particularly with IOM and Industry 4.0 and what's going on there, that just seems to have taken a real leap this year and moved in the right direction. 2 years ago, I was just talking to vendors about Industry 4.0, and it was very theoretical and very kind of observations on what could be done. Now I'm talking to more and more EMS companies, and they're telling me stories about how they've deployed it, how they've had success, and how that success has maybe driven stickiness with their customers or benefits through to the end user, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah. When I talk to vendors around the show, I'm hearing about 50% of the sales they're actually making are related to smart factory. So it's definitely gathering some momentum and being seen as a vehicle for collecting data and optimizing the process. One of the things we were highlighting this week, incidentally, was the fact that there seems to be a bit of confusion around with some factories where they mention, well, we've got 96% first pass yield, and they actually confuse that with machine uptime. And according to like IPC, there's something like 37% downtime in factories.
I can
average,
absolutely believe that.
So that's a huge area to be able to
improve. And I think IOM does offer that solution, or at least it offers the visibility and the measurability so people can deal with that. I mean, there's a complete smorgasbord of technologies and solutions that are coming together. And as you mentioned before, one of the challenges in that is how they do all come together around one standard. And as you know, that's been a bit of a challenge this week.
Definitely has. I mean, we had the IPC Connected Factory Initiative debate yesterday, and it's definitely moving forward, but we're still not at a point where we've actually got a product we can work with. And I honestly think they're under the gun a bit. They've got a window here that they've got to deliver this on, because people are getting impatient and talking. There are whispers of other initiatives. So I think they really need to deliver on this within the next 6 months.
Frankly, I think if they don't do something this year, people are going to go their own way. And the problem has always been, you've got large MES players, but you've also got large contract manufacturers that have multi-sites and have their own systems. They want a solution, and when I've talked to them, it's been very much about just do it. Let's get this standard out there and let's get working. But what is encouraging, two things that are encouraging. One is the openness and the collaborative nature that we've not seen in this industry before, particularly from really competitive companies. And the other is the speed at which those that have seen the system and have kind of previewed it believe it can be deployed to the market. So when we do get it out there, I believe we'll see it. My view is we need to see it by the end of this year, and by the time we get back here next year, we need to see that logo on as many machines and as many systems as possible, that they are CFX compliant or CFX ready.
Right. No, I totally agree. And I also agree with the comment about the openness. I mean, companies that were previously trying to follow a bespoke system, and you have to use our bespoke system for it all to work, are now taking a different view.
And those that we totally would not expect to collaborating together. And we've seen that with our own event IOM up in Sunnyvale in California in May at Plug and Play. It's really interesting to see the different contract manufacturers that are there, the different vendors that are there, that are sharing their story and sharing their vision in a super collaborative way. They're really opening the kimono and saying, this is what we're doing, what are you doing, how can we help each other?
Well, it's a fabulous venue because it's really full of all these startups that are doing all these really cool projects. So the venue, first of all, is great for it. And I'm glad you mentioned it because we have been telling people about it all week. We have a 2-day event, of course, on May 10th and 11th here in Sunnyvale, California. We've got the same strong platform of software presenters and people that are doing machine-to-machine integration. But on the day before, on the 10th, we're planning to do a workshop on 3D printing and robotics.
And I think they're really important to me. And again, that relates exactly to this week. I've been talking to people about that kind of kicking off point for Industry 4.0 or IOM. And that's, to me, that's what the EMS guys originally struggled with. It's this huge blank sheet, this huge project with all these complexities. They need somewhere to dive in, and it's nice that you're seeing companies, like Kirk or other companies that are providing isolated solutions that have a defined ROI and a defined performance indication that they can actually measure it. But it is that challenge of how do you get started on this journey.
Well, I mean, the IOM event is an ideal place to come and learn more about it because it's nice that these smaller companies you're talking about can also mingle with some of the biggest in our industry, like Jabil and these
you're going to see those large companies there, but you also, which I think is really cool, I find Plug and Play and these incubators really energetic. You get these young, small entrepreneurial companies, and it's amazing to see what they can bring to these kind of very large, complex projects because they're looking at it with fresh eyes. They're not looking at it with all the historical baggage you and I and a lot of the people in these halls have. So.
Well, it's interesting. I was in Japan a couple of weeks ago and I went to a keynote by a Cisco presenter, and the question was put about the amount of data or what data they should be gathering, and he came back very firmly saying, look, gather everything, because you don't know what you're going to need 3 years down the track, so gather every piece of data, and that seemed to be pretty sound advice.
Which is great news if you're a data center company, because there's a lot of a lot of data out there.
But I think this journey is going to go a lot further than you think. I mean, we're starting at this point with machine-to-machine collaboration and factory-wide supply chain and making sense of all that, but it's eventually going to go down to the materials level.
And to the business processes and various tiers of the supply
Somebody's
chain.
going to write the DNA of materials. You're using an indium paste and a Henkel underfill and some other an Enthone board. What's the compatibility? Because they're all working at different CTE mismatches.
And that's where it becomes, for me, really interesting. And I was at CES in January in Las Vegas looking at some of the leading edge technologies that are used in the consumer market and how they're going to come back and affect our industry. And there were two really interesting areas. One's augmented reality, the use of augmented reality, not just for gaming, but in the industry. And the other is artificial intelligence. And when we see those two find their way in amongst all that IOM environment, there are some super exciting opportunities.
Well, I mean, I think there's some companies started down that road here already. I mean, for example, Kurzessa, they're using these lovely the Google glasses out in the field. So if the operator has a problem with a machine, he puts the Google glasses on, and the person back at headquarters actually sees what the guy's looking at.
And can support that diagnosis. And can support that, and using artificial intelligence to do preventative maintenance, to do all that kind of stuff is going to really add value in the industry. So I just see that path moving on really quickly this year. I think it's a breakout year for IOM, and it's nice to be involved in it, and it's nice to see the EMS industry, which has always been so lean because of tight margins. It's nice to see them really taking manufacturing excellence and operational excellence very, very seriously, and seeing it as a differentiator.
Well, 37% machine uptime is a huge potential gain there.
Well, it is.
So a couple of things going back to the floor here at Apex. I mean, some of the things that I've seen Panasonic have completely rewritten their Panasim software system. They're now in version 10, but they brought in a lot of supply chain modules, materials handling, and they're doing some pretty cool stuff. And then over at ASM, they did a virtual factory tour. Now this is the first time they did it, so it was really interesting. You know, I think they're going to obviously develop it going forward, but it was quite interactive in as much that you went in and you registered, and after you registered you went around each station and they asked you questions about your process, and after you answered the questions they told you how everybody else was doing. So it was a way of being able to benchmark yourself against your competitor or your peers. I like that, and I like that their booth has got that kind of factory floor look at it, with the offices at one end and the stuff there. It's got that nice kind of modern urban feel. I was impressed with that.
Right,
it's pretty cool. There's a picture of it there on the screen. It was
with Mr. Mark Ogden and Garby. Yeah, and they're using the RFID tag to follow people around, which again is part of that whole process of using IOM to identify users, to have that traceability. One of the other trends that I've seen here as I've talked to people rather than walking around is that we used to talk about these traceability issues and these reporting issues as being relevant to compliant industries like medical and automotive. For me now, it's for every industry. You know, we're seeing that leveling off of all markets, so you have to have that in all sectors.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, you know, Phil, I think it's been a great week. I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your thoughts with us. You know, hopefully we're going to see what's going to be the next show.
Well, thanks very much, and stay classy, San Diego, as Ron Burgundy would say.
Okay, we'll see you next time, probably NetCon China. I think it's going to be the next one.
Absolutely. I think, just quickly, I think there's some interesting trends going on with NetCon China and Productronica China, and a shift of energy there, but we'll talk about that another time.
I totally agree, and that's one probably that'll be good for...
We'll talk about that in China.
In China, yeah.
Okay.
Take care, Trevor. And thank you for joining us. Okay, and we're cutting to a commercial break now, and after that, of course, we're going to be talking to Marty Hart at Topline, who's been doing some really interesting stuff with NASA. So that's coming up after the break. And thank you once again to my friend Phil.
Thank you.